Hello and welcome to Tea with Jess. I'm Jess Montgomery and I write the Kinship Historical Mystery series. And as one of my characters, Nana, says in the series, life is hard, have tea. So today's tea mug is my Santa mug because we're technically still in the Christmas season until through January 6th. So I believe in celebrating all 12 days of Christmas. Um, if I sound a little scratchy or I start coughing today, I will just share with you that even though I am double vaxxed and boosted, I did end up with COVID a couple days after Christmas. I am really thankful for the vaccines because I know that without those, my symptoms would be so much worse than they are. So now I'm just sort of scratchy throated and had a little sore throat for a while and whatnot, but doing better. And as Nana says, life is hard. Have tea. So I've got mint tea with honey in it today. And I'm excited that you're not going to have to listen to my scratchy throat throughout all this because my guest today is Katrina Kittle. She is one of my very best friends. We've been friends a long time, I think over 20 years we've been friends. And she's also a fabulous writer and a fabulous educator. She's one of those rare people who can combine um, fabulous writing with knowing how to teach writing in a way that's super motivational and inspiring, which is why I have her on because Happy New Year, by the way. And if you're like me and Katrina, then you like to set goals and think about what you'd like to achieve in the new year. And Katrina's really great at inspiring people. So we're going to hear from her in a minute, but I want to tell you a little bit more about her. She's the author of 4 books, Traveling Light, Two Truths and a Lie, The Kindness of Strangers, and The Blessings of the Animals. Those 4 are all for adults, and you can see the beautiful cover of Kindness of Strangers up in the corner. And 1 novel for tweens, Reasons to be Happy. The Kindness of Strangers was the winner of the 2006 Great Lakes Book Award for fiction. She teaches creative writing workshops. We're going to talk about that in a little bit for all ages, focusing on craft and, like I said, motivation, and is especially good at jumpstarting stalled writers. This is true. She has jump-started me several times. She teaches online and in the Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus area through Wordsworth Writing Connections, although the classes are often online now, so anyone from anywhere can attend. And she is a lecturer in creative writing at University of Dayton. She's a public speaker. She'll be featured at this year's Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop as a keynote speaker. And she often leads her Leap and the Net Will Appear class and her Happy Class workshops. And she's been a Dayton TEDx speaker as well. So I'm very excited to welcome Katrina to Tea with Jess.
Yay!
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too. Thank you for joining me. So I've shared a lot of detail about your writing. People can find out a lot more about you at katrinakittle.com. And by the way, gorgeous new website. I've been meaning to tell you that. It's been updated, right?
Yes, it has. Thanks to Heather Martin at Martin Inc. If I can put in a little plug for her,
Oh,
she did
okay.
beautiful work. I'd been wanting to do
She
it
did.
forever and thought, oh, I'll do it myself. I'm a smart person, but I really believe in outsourcing your weaknesses. And
There
she
you go.
she did a beautiful job. So thank
She did. Well, there you go. Tip number 1, outsource your weaknesses. Boy, do I have a list that I could outsource.
you.
So, yeah, people should go see your website to get more detail than what I was able to share. But tell us about how you got started as a writer. What got you into this crazy craft of creative writing?
Oh, and it is crazy, isn't it? It is crazy. Like for instance, my cup today says, nevertheless, she persisted, which I think is one of the most important things we must do in this crazy business. But way before I was in the business part of writing, I was always a writer. As a little kid, I always kept journals and wrote stories of any assignment in school where you had to write a story. I was always pages over, and now I know how annoying that is. But teachers were very kind and supportive. Any kind of little writing prompt, I would just take it and run with it. And I honestly didn't really think about writing for publication until after undergrad. At first, I studied dance, and then I studied theater, and then I was in an honors tutorial English program. And so when I first graduated, I was teaching high school. And I think all of those had to do with storytelling, like dance and theater in particular. And some of that was really great training for a writer, to be honest. And I started thinking about a particular story I wanted to tell. This was in the mid-90s, and I wanted to write a story that put a human face on AIDS. I had lost a great many friends in dance and theater. And so I started, I think, the best place a writer can with a story I was interested in. And I just started writing it before I really, really studied the craft and figured out how to get published. I just started writing it and learned this other stuff along the way. And fortunately for me, I was in dance and theater, two areas that have very strong beliefs in craft, in the idea of honoring an apprenticeship and continuing to study a craft. And so I approached it the same way of like, I can't pretend I know what I'm doing. I need to study from great people and learn how to do this and be the student, be the beginner. But I really did start with a novel, not a short story. I hardly ever write short stories, but I always start with a story I'm passionate about.
Okay. I'm really glad that you brought in acting and ballet dancing, because I was actually going to ask you about that. And you answered the question, how those endeavors influenced your writing discipline, that, to understand that it is a discipline. You do need to, be a student. You do need to be disciplined in how you, create story. And I love that you point out there's story in dance as well as on the stage and on the page.
And not always, but frequently. And so I really credit ballet for the discipline. And everything in theater is about motivation, which we need to do in our stories as well, to know what's motivating a character to do something, recognizing the obstacles. And dancers and actors take class throughout their careers.
All the time, yeah.
And I love to take class. Oh, I love to. And I love a great new writing book. And anytime I can learn from other writers, I soak it up.
Yeah, absolutely. The only art I did before writing was piano performance. I studied classical piano for a long time. I got pretty good at it, I will say.
I did not know this about you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. How have I not told you this? So I studied for quite a while, and I thought about either majoring or minoring in piano performance. And then I realized, I honestly realized I just didn't have the passion for piano that I had for creative writing. So I sometimes regret that I let my skill go in playing, but I don't regret focusing on creative writing. But one of the things that helped me memorize long pieces was I would make up a story that would go with each movement of the piece. Like, and now the girl is going into the field, and there's the boy waiting for her, or whatever. If it was
That's
Beethoven.
brilliant. That's brilliant. And that makes total sense to me. I don't have any musical talent whatsoever, so I always admire people who do. But that makes sense to me, that you would think of them like stories.
Like, here's a story to go with this piece. So you've lived such a creative life, and it's given you plenty of fodder for helping and inspiring other people on the creative path, whether in writing or as an avocation. So I want to talk about goal setting and starting a new year and starting fresh. And I'm going to ask a really probably obvious question. So, Katrina, do you believe in setting goals? How do you
Can I totally geek out and nerd out here?
Yes,
I think anyone who knows me knows that I love to make lists and to set goals big time. I totally believe in that. I saw a quote, and I'm not going to be able to credit it correctly, but I saw a quote years ago that talked about, in the absence of resolutions, we become strangely, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but strangely obsessed with silly trivia, daily trivia. And,
Mm.
we just keep, if you don't set a goal, then how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. You just keep doing these daily weird things without setting any kind of like, here's what I'm hoping to move toward. Then you just keep doing that stuff and it's not going anywhere. And it just becomes this daily trivia sort of. So yes, I love to set goals, and I'm kind of a little nutty about it, but it's something I adore. Like I know our mutual friend Aaron Flanagan also loves this kind of stuff. Anything I can track, right? But so I keep a planner, and I'll set a month for a year, and I try to put a word on each year, kind of name a project like this is the year of blank.
Yeah, I just gave myself a word.
Yeah, well, and sometimes my word makes no sense to anyone else, but I understand it. Like that's all it needs is a title for me. So like the year of the beekeeper. Like
okay.
So like, and I know what that means. But then it built into that will then be like these monthly check-ins for myself. So the last Sunday of each month, I'll look at the goal, like how is it going, what's working, what's not working. And so especially when it comes to writing goals, since we're talking about writing today, but actually any goal, it's really important to look at both what's working and what's not. And not in a way. So what I hate about people, like when you see all these ads in the new year for setting resolutions and stuff like that, so much of it comes from this place of punishing ourselves, that we have to be more disciplined, and we have to, that we're lazy and we're essentially bad people and we're going to finally whip ourselves into shape. And that's not what I'm into at all. So when I talk about looking at what doesn't work, I want to do it from like the point of view of a scientist, where you're just looking at the data and like, okay, that didn't work. So I know that now. I learned from it. Why didn't it work? What could I do differently, and see if this new way of doing it works. So it's not about beating ourselves up, because I feel like we do way too much of that anyway. And this business certainly does way too much of that anyway. So it's more just about collecting information about, okay, this isn't working. Why do I, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if this isn't working, what can I change? Like, and sometimes I have no idea what I should change, but sometimes it's really clear. But either way, it's just, you got to keep tweaking it. And it never stays the same. Like with a new job, with a new things in life, like when I was caring for my mother who had dementia, or, there's people who have small children, there's things that change. So you can't always do it the exact same way. You've got to be flexible. And boy, this pandemic, if it's taught us nothing else, it's how to be flexible and resilient. And I'm sick of hearing the word pivot, but we do need to sometimes pivot and be like, all right, now I need to do it this way for now, that kind of thing. I think I got way off on that question.
No, that's great. So do you feel, obviously you can say no, do you feel like sharing your word for this year?
Well, I will share that I'm really behind and I don't have it pinned down. And so just this morning, I turned in. I know, but usually I'm way ahead. And so this is different for me, but I decided I'll just own it. For two reasons. Just this morning, I turned in the final, you know how that goes, the final for now version of a new manuscript to my agent. It's going to be on submission soon. So I was really focused on that during my break.
Yeah.
And some people know about my cat, Joey, who's sort of Facebook famous, and he's been having a lot of health issues. And so there was a lot of time during this break that was also spent with a lot of appointments and phone calls. And he's doing fine. Just I'll put that out there. He's doing fine.
You're going to panic everybody.
He is older and he has a pretty serious underlying health condition. So, this is teaching. I think my word might be something about, or the phrase might be something about being really present this year or savoring, that kind of thing. But so I've been behind, but I think for genuine reasons. So again, it's not about beating yourself up. It's like but I have the rest of this week before I go back to UD, and I want to, like tomorrow, I just picture doing a whole bunch of journaling and playing with that stuff, which I love to do. So I'll let you know when I know my word, but I think it is going to have something to do with that, the idea of being present.
I like that. Mine is bold.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I want to be bold this year. Not in a silly, like, I'm bold, I'm jumping off the roof. What could possibly go wrong with that plan? Kind of way, but but bold, like embracing the goals that I've set for the year instead of shying away from them. And speaking of phrases I don't like the phrase "lean into."
Oh
Comes with
yeah.
all kinds of privileged connotations, but in a way, kind of lean into or be bold about embracing that. No, this really is what I want to do. So,
And kind of
um,
owning it, which I
and
think
owning it.
you do that really well. I always look to you, and I mean this sincerely. This isn't me kissing up to my friend online, but I feel like you are very, you already are pretty bold with that, or owning, like, I want to do X, and you find ways to make it happen. I feel like I sit on ideas way too long before I take action, and I always admire the way that you're like, I'm doing this, and I want to be more like you.
Oh, well, I want to be more like you, so that works out. And you mentioned this a little bit, but do you reward yourself for milestones that you've met? Like, do you give yourself a sticker or a
Yes,
frappuccino, or what kind of
I
rewards do you
am
believe in?
very, very motivated by stickers. It's kind of ridiculous. But so I have a calendar in my office that's right beside me where I write. And for every day that whatever the week's goals are, because I don't it's not always possible for me to write daily, but whatever
Mhm.
the looking at the week ahead, if I write on the days I say I will, I get a little star, a little glittery star on my calendar date. And then whatever the goals are for that week, if I hit that goal, there's a different kind of sticker I get. But
Oh,
then
that's smart.
yeah, and so I love stickers. And again, it motivates me. And then if I am on a thing where I'm writing daily, you don't want to break that streak. You see those stickers and they're so inspiring, and you're like, I don't want to miss one. And then here's the thing is I'm really competitive with myself, but I also am very honest. So I'm not going to put a sticker if I haven't actually done the work. So I have to earn it.
Mm.
But you mentioned like a martini, or one of my favorite things to do, because these don't have to cost any money, but rewarding yourself is really important because it kind of coaches your brain like more of this. If we never reward ourselves, or if we hold on too long for like the great big goals, like I'm going to get a book published,
Oh.
if you wait for the huge ones to reward yourself, it's not enough. So I'm a firm believer in celebrating every step along the way, each milestone, each accomplishment, each tiny goal that you reach. But one of my favorites is a day where I just read, like a day that I
Mm.
clear of all other commitments. I'm not teaching. I don't do anything else. I'll make sure I have a really good coffee and maybe a little pastry, and I get to just stay in jammies and read for like the whole day. So that's like one of my
Ooh.
big rewards for like big goals. And then you know me, garden center days are also another thing. Those can get expensive, but yeah, each little statue in my garden, I could tell you like that's when I finished Kindness to Strangers, and that's from when
Oh,
I did this,
wow.
and that's from when I did, yeah, so little things like that.
I like that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. And
Well,
you
we
you
should celebrate it all. Just keep
yeah,
celebrating it all. Don't be stingy with yourself.
yeah. And I like that sticker method of, you did a thing today, so you get one kind of sticker. You met the week, because you're right. There are there are days where you can't write or whatever, and but if you achieve the week's goals, then you still get a little
Yeah.
reward.
Yeah.
I like that. I think I may adopt your sticker method. And you kind of talked about this already a little bit when you said you're still working on your word for good reasons. Congratulations on getting in the
Thank you.
manuscript,
Thank you.
and obviously Joey is a top priority always. But if you don't hit a milestone, how do you suggest people give themselves grace? Like,
Oh, yes.
if you have like a whole week where there are no star stickers because there was no writing done at all, how do you give
Yeah.
yourself grace to keep going?
That is so important. That is so, so important. One of the things I tell people, like in the classes, and there's two coming up that have to do with these kinds of things. But part of almost any big goal, there's going to be times that you stumble. It's part of the process. I mean, it just is. You kind of have to. If you go into it knowing that there's going to be days like that, I think it gets a little easier to extend that grace and not be so mean to ourselves. But I always tell people one of the things that's so fascinating to me is, say somebody sets a goal and they're like, I'm going to write 5 out of 7 of these days. And I'll ask them, okay, how'd it go, as we're checking in a class or whatever, doing accountability. And they'll be like, oh, I failed, I didn't hit it. And they're like beating themselves up. And I'm like, well, let's break it down. Let's look at it. And they wrote for 3 days. And then the third day, they didn't write as long as they said they would. And I'm like, what I always tell people is you have to focus on what you did accomplish and not always look at what you didn't. If you said you were going to write 5 of 7 days and you wrote 3 of those days, that's progress. That's something. And you should focus on that and be really honest at looking at why didn't you do the other days. And if it was like, I just wasted time, then that's one of those things where I say, look at it and be like, what made it easy to do that? What could you change so that doesn't happen again? And sometimes just the awareness is enough. And if it was some serious thing, like I was at care center with my cat, like, then again, like you were exactly where you were supposed to be. You weren't, you would hate yourself if you didn't take care of your pets so that you could hit your writing goal. Like, what kind of monster are you, And so what I always tell people is we focus so much on what we didn't do. And rather than looking at what we did, celebrate anything you did accomplish. And then all we can do is go forward. It's always forward. Just look at the next week or the next day, and you can always start again. You kind of have to become an expert, I think, in writing or anything with any goal. Become an expert in starting over. And it doesn't matter how many times you do start over. All that matters is you do begin again, and that you keep it going, and that you're always willing to come back to that place of like, okay. But it's hard. Grace is hard, but we're often so much more willing to give it to someone else than to ourselves.
Absolutely true. Oh, but those are great tips. Those are great words to live by. I like that very much. And you mentioned you've got some upcoming classes. I'm going to put in the comments section links.
Thank you.
Or maybe in the description, I'll put links. But tell us about the classes. Tell us about what they are, how people can sign up for them.
Yeah. So, most of my writing classes that aren't like university courses are through Wordsworth Writing Connections, which I just adore. It's run by Darren McGarvey. I've taught for them a bunch. They do really good stuff, and I'm not their only instructor. So they get other good people. So you should sign up for their newsletter or check their website pretty frequently for all kinds of good writerly things. But I have a 5-week online class coming up called Wooing Your Muse. And I really like this title. I did a little mini version of it for Irma Bombeck, the Irma Bombeck workshop, October 2020. And for Writer's Digest last summer. Both of those events were supposed to be in person and we're not. So talk about flexibility. So this is the longer version of it where we really dive into, it's mostly about changing your relationship with your writing practices. So it's perfect for anyone who wants a little nudge. Like if you wanted to get started and maybe you've never written before, it's perfect for that. If you've been doing lots of writing, but maybe find yourself, you sort of lost your mojo, it's perfect for that. Or for a lot of people, the pandemic was strangely unproductive, right? And when we first all got sent home, it felt like, oh, this will be perfect. I'll get so much done. And for most writers I know, that was not true. Even though conditions seemed ideal, there was this thing, anxiety and stress and things that kind of got in the way. So it's really about really simple ways to like revisit the practice of writing. And when you sometimes just focus on the practice of writing and not so much about writing something good, you're much more likely to write something good because you're writing. And so the title really comes from this idea of getting back to that place where, we like to talk so often. I think writers, we fall into that trap of talking about how writing is so hard and how we suffer for it and it's so difficult and nobody understands. But really, we do it because we love it, but sometimes we forget that. And so it's about this focusing on the joy it brings us and there's an Alice Walker quote where she talks about her relationship with writing and how you have to be the host and expect the guest. And I loved that idea about wooing your muse. It's the guest that you're inviting over. And so it's a series of tips of how to get that relationship better and full too with tons and tons of prompts that you could either use and exercises that you could use to enrich a work in progress or to start something brand new. And that one starts, I have to I'm so bad with dates. Everything's blurring in my head. So Wooing Your Muse starts, that's going to be running Wednesdays, 5 consecutive Wednesdays beginning January 19th. And so that information is on the Wordsworth website. But it's also on my website, since Sharon has been so lovely to give you that. I have that also listed on my classes and events. But then I also do this class called Leap in the Net Will Appear that I've been doing. I was trying to remember, Sharon was in the inaugural class. And I think, I want to say 2015 or 2014. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so it was a while ago. And this one is not just for writers. It's what I have my writing classes, and then I jokingly call them my life classes. And Leap in the Net Will Appear is about goal setting in particular, about creating positive change that's not like setting resolutions and beating yourself up and deciding that there's like 10 things you have to change in your life and improve about yourself. It's more about clarity, about really looking at, how do you want to feel? What do you really want? And what do you just think, what have you been told you should want? So it's a series of exercises about getting really clear about what you really want, and then looking at the tiny, simple. I should say simple. Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple steps to get momentum going with, if you're feeling stuck about, I want to make this change and I don't know how to get going, exercises that really help with that. So a lot of writers take this class, but also people from every other vocation, calling, some of them very artistic, some of them not at all. I've had people in there who are attorneys and finance people. It could be for anyone at all. And that's men and women. But that's on Saturday mornings, and it goes 3 Saturdays, and that starts January 15th. And that one is all mine, not through Wordsworth. And you can get that information at my website. And that one's so fun. There's a really good group assembling for that. Sometimes I've got a couple people repeating it who took it a few years back. And I love to do that one every now and then. I don't do it very often anymore, because I love, all of these things are things you can't just do them and mark them off like, got it. These are things you have to sort of maintain and revisit every now and then to kind of brush up. And I was due, and I'm really looking forward to doing the exercises that I'm leading other people through.
Oh, that's fun. And these are both online, right?
Yes. Yeah. They are both online,
Okay.
nothing in person yet. I'm hoping maybe spring. I don't know. It's so hard to know. You can't, I hate limbo. I am such a closure junkie. So this has been a really big lesson. That's the one thing that the pandemic has really taught me to be better about, is you cannot see the future.
You cannot. Well, that was one of my final questions was, like you say, a lot of writers didn't produce as much as they initially might have thought they would. But it's gone on long enough that I think probably most writers are back to producing, or at least thinking creatively about what they want to write. And the same for other types of artists. How has the pandemic shaped your creative discipline? I know you mentioned it, you and I've talked about how it's made us all like be creatively flexible for events, or, coming up with things like Tea with Jess. But how has it shaped your creative life?
Oh, wow. I think at first I did everything I tell other people they shouldn't, which is I was really beating myself up for, like, why aren't you getting anything done? I was teaching from home, UD, we all got sent home. And that first semester, we weren't even on Zoom yet. We were just sort of emailing with students. There was so much time. It was crazy. But it was also a really scary and uncertain time. And so, yeah, I think I had to learn to give myself a lot more grace, which makes me sound like a hypocrite. But every now and then you're like, practice what you preach.
No, I think it makes you sound genuine, because I think we have to, all these things you've talked about, I'm not surprised you've had some repeat attendees, because we have to remind ourselves of these disciplines and re-engage with them over and over. It's like exercising, or tidying your house. You have to keep at it and get back in the habits.
And that's exactly what I did. That's how it affected me, is I'd been writing like gangbusters, and then this happened, and I just kind of stopped. And it was so hard to be writing a novel. It felt too hard and felt too daunting. And, things like last January 6th and things. It was like, who cares? The world is falling apart, you know? And then I really had to be like, okay, what got me through this pandemic were stories, either reading and escaping through reading or amazing shows and series, stories, right? In lots of different forms. And I'm like, story matters. Story always matters. And so many people were transported and got to escape during this crazy time because of stories. And so I'm like, that will always matter. And so I had to remind myself of that. And then almost everything that we talk about in Wooing Your Muse, I just came back to the basics and started just doing the practice of writing again. If it felt too hard to be writing a novel, then I could write about how hard it felt and how scary the times were. And I just started really doing exercises and prompts and just keeping the practice of writing in this very gentle way until it felt safe to like jump back into a bigger project that required more focus. And so I did like find myself going back to the beginning of the stuff that I talk about in class and actually using that material to like help myself. And it was kind of, in some ways, it was really affirming and lovely to be like, oh, this does work. You know, like this really does work.
It does work.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so to wrap up, do you have like top 3 tips for people who want to write or create in 22, but maybe are a little hesitant to start? Like, what 3 things would you tell them to do?
Wow. Oh, this is awesome. The first thing, it sounds so flippant, but I'm like, just do it. We used to have hobbies, right? People used to have hobbies and could pursue things like I remember my dad took guitar and nobody ever asked him if he was going to be a guitarist or, oh, is that Luna? I hear one of your you know, she's like, time is up. Pay attention. You know what? He just did it because it brought him joy. And so we need to, now I feel like there's so much pressure on people. If you start to do anything creative, it's supposed to become the side hustle. It's supposed to become profitable. So I'm like, follow the joy. If you want to draw or paint or write, just do it. If it brings you joy, then allow yourself that joy. And then once you start doing it, particularly with writing, this is anyone who's taken class with me has heard me say this. You can make it better later. First, you just have to make it exist. And so just do the writing first, and don't get all caught up in getting it perfect or knowing everything before you start. Just write, just get into that. And then remember that you're doing this because on some level you thought it was fun, right? So it shouldn't feel like some, you know, torture. It should be fun, and try to bring that fun and that joy back to it. Is that 3? I think that's 3.
I think that's 3.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Having me. It's just so inspiring, and I'm so glad you're feeling better. And I hope you keep feeling better and better.
I will. I definitely will. Lots of tea. Well, thank you to everybody who joined us. And thank you to those who watch later. And don't forget to check out Katrina's website, and I'll update the description later this evening with links to the classes that she mentioned. And so until next week, be kind to yourselves and one another. Remember, life is hard. Have tea. Thank you.
Cheers.